back to another episode of the TF Soccer Training Podcast, where we are concerned with helping your player develop on and off the field. I'm your host, Coach Taylor. I'm super excited because I'm able to have my first guest for this podcast. First guest in the history of this podcast, so I'm super pumped and excited about that. Before we get to the conversation with him, we're going to take a quick break. Or for me, and again, this is for parents of players who are looking to go and play in college, what it is he's looking for, what it is that different college coaches look for. This is such a good episode if that is something that you want for your player. And again, for players, this is the chance for you to listen and to get it straight from a college coach about what he's looking for, but also hopefully to help guide you in your own search about what you're looking for. Some mistakes that he made, some different things that he learned through his own playing career, and what exactly are you looking for on the soccer side, but also what exactly are you looking for in the environment and the culture that you're going to be a part of, hopefully for the next 4 years. So lots of good info, dig deep. He gives great information. So if this is something that you're really interested in doing, go ahead, check this out. We're excited to have my first guest on my podcast here. It's a really good friend of mine, a former coach, and really a mentor for me in my own development. Coach Carter Poe. He is at Case Western Reserve University, my alma mater, and I'm just so glad to have you join us today for our podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. So I'm super excited. So thank you.
Sweet. If you can kind of tell us about your path into coaching, and obviously you're at CWRU right now, but kind of tell us how you got into coaching, your path, and why it's so, your whole path to getting there. Let's just start there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd say first off, I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be in coaching or educating. If you would have told me that when I was in high school or senior year of high school or something, I would have never believed you. But I went to college. I went to Duquesne University in downtown Pittsburgh. When I was at Duquesne, I was a business major, and I was really there to play soccer, and that's what I was most excited about. But after 1 year in business, I just really hated it, and so I was trying to think about what I could maybe do different, what I could get into, and at the time, I had started helping out a little bit with my former club, just like around winter break, summer break, help them with some camps or run sessions, just a little bit here and there on the side. To make a buck. And that was kind of fun to me. And so when I started my sophomore year of college, I was telling my dad after the first week of class, I was like, Dad, I don't know if I don't think I can do this business thing. And he was like, well, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I'm interested in the soccer. And he said, okay, well, what else? Cause you can't pick soccer. You got to pick a real thing here. And so he said, well, what about education? I know you've been doing a little bit of coaching. Coaching is really, or teaching is a lot like coaching. Maybe you should check out teaching. And I was like, okay, maybe that'd be cool. So I got into education, and then my first week in education, I did a field placement. Actually, I think it was a kindergarten class, and I loved it. And I was like, I just felt like my first day in there, I could do this the rest of my life. This is awesome. And so I got a teaching degree. I was a middle level education major. So I was kind of getting set up to teach grades 4 through 8 is what I'd be certified for. But when I was about to graduate, I just kind of felt like I still had the soccer bug a little bit and want to stay around it a little bit longer. So I thought maybe I'll go get like a GA position, and then I can do a little bit more soccer and get my master's, and then I'll be kind of ready to teach and all those kind of things. So So I went and I was kind of looking for those sort of positions, and I just through my freshman year roommate from college just got connected with Mount Union, who were looking for an assistant, started there and just immediately loved it. And so I kind of think of it as like I'm teaching, but I'm teaching with my favorite subject, which is soccer. So, but I've absolutely loved it. Was at Mount Union for about 7 years, actually, as an assistant coach and a head coach. Love working with the guys, love training, love seeing them develop, both on and off the field. And it's awesome. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I love to I love to hear that you were so passionate about. I mean, first and foremost, you kind of said, I loved teaching kindergarten, which is like, I don't think most people would say like, oh yeah, love kindergartners, love working with them. But I think it kind of shows a lot about your passion for just teaching in general, right? And how much how much that goes into your coaching style now, like when you're working with players at at Case, how much of it is, do you feel like you're teaching the game rather than just kind of game managing?
Yeah, no, that's a huge thing. I think, I am, since when I started in coaching, I'm constantly trying to learn as much as I can. And I always feel like I need to keep going and keep learning because I have to keep pushing it so that I always have more that I can teach them. And so, yeah, I'm always thinking about when, as far as training, as far as everything we do, there has to be a purpose to it. And ultimately, like when I'm designing a session, I'm like, okay, what concepts and what things are they going to learn from this? And what are the best exercises I can use to pull that out? And, all the different techniques and things that I'll, go about with them and to try and evoke that. So that's a huge thing for me. And I feel like the players should always be learning something. And we're not just playing small sided or just doing this just because it's the most fun thing, or just, you know what I mean? What is the point? What are they learning? And can you really be a master at a master teacher, I guess, so to speak, and achieving meaningful learning consistently? I think that's a huge, huge part of being a coach for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I've definitely learned as well. It's not just about coming up with the best drills. It's not just about it's helping them to understand and learn from what you're doing, right? Like how they can apply this. And so I just think, yeah, when you have a coach who has that kind of, is a teacher, has a teaching spirit, it goes such a long way. It goes so far for players.
Right, definitely. And yeah, and I think, just thinking that way, it really starts to, it'll help you so much as a coach, so like when I was working with guys at Mount Union, I remember, we're doing simple things like rondos and whatever. And a rondo to me it's about spacing. It's about understanding tempo. It's about understanding, okay, when do I come close to a player to receive, and when should I stay further away, and why am I doing that? And what things am I looking at that help me make that decision? And, when I was first thinking about, trying to get the guys, hey, you gotta show closer, or you gotta come tighter to suck the defender in or create this angle, or, whatever it is. And then it starts to get thinking like, okay, why actually do what helps me actually make those decisions? And then how can I help other people to know how to make that same decision? So I think, yeah, just thinking about that and how to teach that, I think it's helpful, and it gets you in their mindset, and again, just how to help them learn, so.
That's awesome. So something that you just said, like getting in their mindset. Do you feel like what informs you as a coach was that based on what you wanted to receive as a player? So is your coaching style like based off of like, okay, this is what I had as a coach? Because I'll speak for myself. Like the reason I got into technical training was because I felt like I wish I had that growing up. And I wish I had a trainer who was dedicated to and not only technical training, mentorship as well. Like, does that inform you as a coach now? Like wishing that you had the kind of a coach that had that teaching spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the longer I've been in coaching, the more, and I don't mean this like in a mean way or something, but I can kind of be more thoughtful and looking back in my youth career,
Mhm.
and I can look at some of the club stuff and things that I was doing. And, you know, growing up, like one of the first club teams I was on, we had, if you know Darlington Nagby, he's on the Columbus Crew. I mean, we had guys that were, US internationals now and unbelievable talent. And I look, so it was supposed to be, you're on this great team. You should be so good. And the coaching is so good. Well, I look at what was actually going on and I didn't learn anything about anything. And that was just on me to just figure it out. And so I would say, kind of similar to you, that's probably sparked a lot of my coaching is like more bad experiences. And like, okay, like I think there's a lot of that going on now where parents are paying a lot of money for kids to go to clubs and they're really not getting great instruction. They're really not learning things. They're maybe being told things, or maybe they're doing things just because that's what the coach says, but they don't understand what's going on. And they're not smarter, better players. And so, a lot of what I try and do, and I guess to continue off that, like when I was in college, there were certain things where I was like, I never thought, like I said, I was going to go in coaching, but I remember just writing down, and I was so frustrated in a Word document. I started writing down all the things that I would have been doing differently if I was running the team. And I was like, oh, we shouldn't have done this. We should do this. And I did that as a reminder. I was like, if I ever get in this situation, that I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to do that to other people. And so I think that's one of the biggest things when I think about coaching, is treating people how I would like to be treated, first and foremost, doing things that I would want to do. And, within, you can't do what players, everybody wants to do every day, but like, what is fun? How would I want to play? What kind of experience would I want to have? And then get their perspective and do that. I think that's such a huge thing. I'll say to guys, well, this is your team. What do you guys want to do? How should, and I think I always trying to keep their perspective in mind, and what it's like for them is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that shows security in yourself, because I feel like there's a lot of coaches who would say, well, this is the way I want to do this. I'm going to do it my way, and kind of forget about the input from the players. And I think players respect a coach who's going to say, hey, what do you think we should be doing? What is it that you want to do? This is your team, right? So tell me a little bit about like how much ownership do you give to players? So if I'm a player coming in on your team, what is it that you want to see from us to be able to take our team to the next level?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think it's kind of like a blend, so I think the coach needs to come in and they need to set the environment. They need to set the expectations, and some of those things can be shared as well. What do you guys want in your environment? What do you believe is important? And with that, I'm going to bring my set of things. These are things that I think they're non-negotiable for us being successful. And I think, so I'll bring those things. I'll bring a vision of how I want to do things in that kind of thing. But along the way, I think, ultimately, whether it's norms we have, as much as you can give to them, I think is better. So like, I'll solicit feedback at times on training, where you guys pick the uniforms, you guys pick the gear, you guys pick what time we do this, you guys pick these activities we do outside of soccer, you pick these experiences, you guys design the uniforms, it's all your thing, and I'll organize this and you guys run it. And I think, so individually, you're kind of looking for them to take ownership in some of those things. You're trying to mentor them in certain areas, as well along the way, and get feedback. And I think, definitely as you go and you kind of develop leaders and you see the leadership in the group, I think those guys are guys that you can even rely on more so, or even give a little bit more, leadership. So, it's not like every day I'm asking every player like, hey, what'd you think of like the things I designed, but, I might meet with like some of the leadership guys on a weekly basis and get some feedback. Hey, what are some just general thoughts on what's going on with the team, some things you're seeing? And they might say, hey, coach, I feel like we've been doing this a lot and maybe we could use this. And it's like, okay, that means something because it's coming from an honest leadership kind of guy. So long story short, I guess it's kind of a blend. I think the coach has got to provide the environment and the roadmap, And along the way, I think the players can be really helpful for creating even better experience, for giving feedback and things that, that maybe you don't see, as, sometimes you're doing this like a million times. Hey, we got to work on this. We got to work on this. And you're like, coach, we haven't done this in a while. It's like, oh man, we're not scoring goals and I haven't trained finishing in 3 days. Maybe there's correlation, so yeah.
Awesome. That's sweet. Yeah, I think with expectations, I think that's such a big part of it. And there's so much expectations that come from um, the player side, but also I think when you as a coach kind of let them know, like, hey, the expectations are here, right? And that's something that I've learned even doing the technical training. Like the expectations are going to be here, and you got to get there. And then they in turn internalize that and say they kind of take it on themselves to be able to say, oh, I want to do more. I don't want this to just be, I don't want to just meet the expectation. I want to exceed that. And so I think, like you said, like having players to be able to kind of internalize those expectations, and then they in turn kind of are kind of self-policing themselves, not necessarily self-policing, but kind of like regulating that for the team. I think that's so huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, to give you an example of that, well, first and foremost, I would say 100% the expectations coming in and letting it be very clear right away what you're about and how we're going to do things is super important. And so any team that I've worked with, I try and set that up at the beginning, like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is exactly what I expect in training, off the field, blah, blah. If you're not about it, then maybe this isn't for you. But just understand, if you're going to be here and be a part of this, you're saying like, from now on, I'm agreeing to this and I'm going to hold you accountable to that. And so you kind of, I think in that way, you can then, it's easy to hold people accountable because they've agreed to, they understand and they agree and it's been clear. And then it's not like, after the fact, I'm going back and like, hey, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? It's like, you told me this is what you're cool with. So it's not me being mean. It's like, this is what you said. So, we've shared this sort of accountability in it. But I think, going back to what you said and just thinking of an example of like the players starting to then take hold of things. Well, when I was at Mount Union, we had, I'm very adamant about just language. So some people think that's funny. Like, we have a no swearing policy, like with the team at Case, there's no swearing, there's no foul language. I just don't think it's helpful in any way. And also being positive all the time. So there's no, to me, it's not acceptable. Like if I try and pass the ball to you and you're like, and I completely miss, and you're just like, oh, this guy, man, Carter, he sucks, those kind of things, or negative body language because you made a mistake. So we say, hey, that's completely unacceptable. And, at time, or when I started at Mount, that was an adjustment, and people are used to coming from their environments. And we're kind of going through this now at Case where, there's sort of this negativity at times and all that. Well, over time, you just keep, as soon as you see it, you just say, hey, unacceptable. But you whether it's in individual meetings or on the field, we always did, I think it was like 20 push-ups. If we heard a swear word, we'd say 20 push-ups. And there was practices where, you're doing 100 push-ups and it just keeps, and you just keep reinforcing, you keep, and eventually everyone is very well-spoken and everybody is very positive. And that what will happen is, they'll start to say, if they see a peer then out of line or being negative, or a freshman, they'll say, hey, we don't do that here. And constantly the older guys say, hey, nah, man, it's not cool. Like positive. And they'd come in and they'd say that at halftime or after games, they'd say, we get in, they'd say, hey, coach, like they're getting the other team, they're just bickering at each other. Like, we got them. Like they're not positive like us. They don't, and they're going to self-destruct. And so I definitely, I think what you're saying is super accurate. As you set that up, the environment, they agree to it, they buy in, you keep reinforcing it, it builds this culture. And then over time, that's kind of who they are. And so that's what they expect. And so when they see different, they're like, no, that's not what we're doing or who we are. That's just, that doesn't go here. And so, yeah, then they're on top of continuing it and sustaining it and all that. So
And I think that's that's it. When you don't have to be the one who's constantly telling them like, okay, this is what we do, but you actually don't back it up. Like you say something, but you actually are like, okay, I don't actually mean this. But when you say something, you reinforce it, and then everybody starts taking hold of that. That's when they're the ones who are kind of saying, like you said, the older guys are saying, hey, we don't do that here. Hey, we're going to be positive. Hey, this is going to be our culture. And that I think makes the experience and the environment so much more, it's like so much more enjoyable because everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows like this is where we're gonna go. So what was the question? How is it going to transition from there? um, I guess that leads me into kind of the mentorship side of this. So how I know we touched on it a little bit, or you touched on it a little bit with you want to be able to kind of talk to them in individual meetings. How much, obviously with coaching you have a large team you have to manage, but how much like individual like mentorship goes into what it is that you're doing on a daily basis?
Yeah, as much as possible, and it's difficult. When I was at Mount Union, we would have 50 players in the program. There's a JV and a varsity setup, which that happens in D3 and D2 programs, some programs. But one thing that we started when I first started at Mount, that I am like adamant about above any other thing, and every time when I give players feedback survey, the one thing that they appreciate the most is individual meetings. On a bi-weekly basis, we would meet with every single player. I mean, it would kill like 2 days straight, just straight through meeting. Um, but we meet with every player. We would get to know them. We would just catch up. Hey, how are you doing? How's class going? How's your family doing? How can I help you with your classes? Do you need tutors? We'd be doing things like that. We talk, hey, this is what I'm seeing in soccer. How do you think you're playing? This is why I feel this way. This is what I think you need to do to get to the next level. Here are some film clips of you that kind of point to what I'm talking about. We'd do goal setting with them. We'd always have some questions like, hey, favorite food, funniest moment, whatever it is, but just things that we're constantly building a relationship. We're constantly getting to know them. They're getting constant feedback on things that I'm seeing. And then as you're going through and these things going on in the environment, you can also address those as well. So, hey, I'm noticing this on the field, and to be honest with you, I don't mean to knock you, but you've been pretty negative last couple of practices, and I don't want to see it anymore. And that's where some of those things can be hashed out too. So I think having so you can't necessarily get to every player every day and give as much feedback as you like. But I think setting aside time to meet with all the guys, they appreciate that so much. You get to know each other. I think that's just so super huge and beneficial for them. And then in addition to that, anytime I can to give some individual attention and feedback, I'm always trying to do that. So, maybe we finished a session and I noticed somebody did really well. And I'll text somebody that, hey, you did a great job today. I just want to let you know that. Keep it up, man. Good stuff. Or maybe somebody needs something, or you notice they're kind of down. It's like, hey, notice you're a little down today. Just want to check in, see what's up, and those things. But I do think that individual, the mentorship, the relationship is massive, and then they feel like, they want to work for you. Then they feel like you care about them, you're trying to help them. And then that kind of fuels the environment. And so you want to do this, so you have this expectation about that. And they're like, okay, well, coach, he wants my best. So I get it. It's not me trying to come in and set all the rules. It's like, I'm trying to help you, and they see it, so.
I love that. It's not about you it's not like you're trying to say, this is how I want everything to be. It's saying, hey, this is the agreement that we've got into, right? And
right.
Because they know that you care because you're doing all these things. I would have loved if my coach would have been able to give me film or breakdown or saying, hey, you know what, you're not doing the right thing there. Like you gotta change what you're doing, because your teammates are responding to your, even though you might be coming from a good place, but they're not responding to the way you're saying that. It's coming off negative. But that comes because you are trying to build a relationship and you're being intentional about it. And I think, was that something that I know you said that was something that you are really big on. Was that something that you received when you were a youth player, or received in college, or is it something that you were just like, this is something I just want to do?
Yeah, that wasn't something I ever really received. I think it was just something like when I started at Mount, um, I just felt like these guys, they need something more. I like, there's things coming up all the time. Like, oh, I need to talk to him about this. And this is kind of important. And I know this guy needs some help with his grades. And I know, and I was an assistant coach, and I was just like, look, we need to meet with these guys. And not just, I think in most places, maybe there's an occasional meeting or an end of the year meeting, or, maybe if they do have meetings, they're not super frequent, or they really don't get into like all of what's going on with the person or whatever it is. But I was like, we should sit down and we should meet with these guys. And I think this would be super helpful, and we get to know them and all that, because, otherwise it's very infrequent that you have very much one-on-one time with a player, and it's tough for them to really know you and know where you're coming from and to appreciate all the things and this. So that's when I told head coach, like, we should just, let's meet with all of them. And I know I've told other programs about this, or I go around and talk with other coaches, other schools, and they kind of look at me like I'm crazy. Like, how could you, that's so much time, to blow 50 minutes, or sometimes, man, we're working on, if we're working on setting our goals, that could be a 20 to 25-minute meeting. Like, how do you, that's just too much time. But I just kind of feel like there's nothing that replaces it as far as time to build that relationship and to build that culture, and to be able to one-on-one, me to infuse in you the mentorship, the principles, the leadership, to give, to directly pour into a person. I think it, is so helpful. So, but yeah, no, I don't mean to keep like going on about that, but no, that wasn't something I got, but just something I was like,
Yeah.
and I think with a lot of stuff that I do with the teams I coach, like, it's just every year goes by, I was like, how can we do this better? Like, what if we tried this? And it just keeps snowballing.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're always constantly saying, okay, what can I do better? But I want to go back a little bit, because I think you touched on something that I've talked about in previous episodes, which is goal setting and being able to articulate where you want to go. And so how important, I know you said that could sometimes take 20, 25 minutes per player. What is that process like? How do you, again, I kind of fall on the SMART system. I don't know if you've heard of the
Yeah.
system, but yeah, what is your process? How do you help them to articulate their goals? Because you first talk to players about their goals, they're like, well, I want to be better. And I'm like, okay, how do you guide them?
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good question. No, we use the similar, we use like kind of the SMART stuff. I think it's a good, helpful tool. And basically where we start is, I tell them, hey, I want you to think, you're going to come up with one goal for me. And I want you to just think about, don't even worry about soccer. I want you to think about, what is something that you really want to accomplish with your life? So it could be soccer. It could be some guys, they want a certain GPA, or I really want this internship with Google, or I want to get this kind of job when I graduate. Or some guys, it's even like spiritual, or maybe it's, I really, I want to have this relationship, whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. And then we'll start to think about, okay, well, if this is your goal, like long-term, like what has to happen if you're going to get this? So somebody might say, I really want to start next year. And I'll say, okay, like if you were honest with me right now, like long-term, why don't you start? Like what, if you like improve these things, like it probably guarantee that you would start. And so they might say, okay, my passing and receiving could get a little bit better. maybe mentally I need to be more resilient and I need to be able to handle making mistakes, or whatever it is. There might be a couple things. And as we do that, we'll try and make them as specific and, smart and all those things as possible. Then we'll say, okay, from there, what has to happen, like in the medium term, over the next couple like weeks and months, whatever, what do you have to do to like take the mental side? Like, how are you going to improve that? And, of course, at first they'll say, well, I'm just going to be really positive, or, something very like out in the clouds kind of thing. And I'm like, well, like specifically, if you could do something to improve that, like what could you do that could probably guarantee that you'd get better at that? And so we'll talk about it, and I'll say, maybe we'll kick around some ideas. It's like, what if you read this book? What if I sent you some articles on, LeBron and what he's done to improve mental side of his game, or, like, okay, so then it becomes, okay, medium term, I'm going to read by June 1st, I'm going to read one book on kind of like sports psychology. Okay, if you're going to hit that by June 1st, what do you got to do in the short term? Okay, well, there's 200 pages in the book, this many weeks. I got to probably be reading a chapter a week. Okay, boom. And that's it. And then that becomes what it is. So when they come in for their individual meeting, now that's just like one subcomponent of their goal, but it's like, okay, hey, this is a goal you wanted to start. You told me you want to start. I didn't set the goal. Okay. We said that you need to improve your technique. You need to improve mentally. We talked about, you've got a hold of this book. Did you read this week? And that becomes part of the meeting. You said you needed to improve your passing and receiving. We broke that down to, you need 2 extra sessions for 30 minutes per week based on position specific passing and receiving. You didn't text me this week. Don't come in here and tell me this is what you want. So, and again, it's kind of putting the ball in their court as far as what they want to do. And, but that's kind of how we go about that process. And, some guys definitely gravitate more towards it than others. Some guys, they run with that and they get really excited and they are all in their goals and it helps them and they achieve it. I wish I could say every player, it made a huge impact in their life, but you can't, everybody's in a different place as far as what they're thinking and doing and all that kind of stuff and what's important to them. But I think at the very least, it gets them thinking about, okay, if I have something in my life that I want to do, how do I develop an action plan that's going to, if I'm honest and I hash it out and I'm specific and measurable and all those things, if I keep these things, it'll probably pretty much put me in the ballpark of achieving this. So
I love that. Having an action plan to be able to take that step. And I love how you broke it down, even saying, okay, this is where you want to be next year. You want to be starting. Okay, how can we break that down? Medium term. Okay, how do we take that medium term down even to short term and having actionable steps? And I think that's super beneficial for players who are in the program, but even kind of switching it to players who are looking to. So if you're a recruit and what is it? Their goal is to come play for CWRU. What is it that they need to be? What is it that you look for from them on the mental side of it, or on the goal setting side of it? How do you know that they're going to be a good fit for that culture? Not even necessarily playing necessarily.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, first and foremost, I think kids need to understand that every single thing that they're doing, I'm evaluating in some way. And it's not like I'm sitting there waiting for them to mess up, but I've noticed things. So, reaching out to coach, being professional in your emails. I think it's very impressive, when a kid comes in and they say, I'm really interested in case, and here's who I am, and here's when I graduated. And these are the reasons why I'm interested in case, because I understand that the biomedical engineering, you know what I mean? And you're like, okay, they really, that comes off as very, very professional. So I think even from things like that, I'm then looking at, I'll try and set up a phone call and we'll talk on the phone and, how are they on the phone? If I go to see them play, I'm watching all the things that are important to my culture. Do they get real, negative with other people when someone messes up? How do they talk to their parents when they're walking to the car after the game? Is mom supposed to carry your bag for you? And, or are they respectful? That tells me something about how they view adults and peers and respect and treating other people. How do they respond when they get scored on? How do they do when they make mistakes and all these guys? So I'm watching all these things. I'm getting an impression. I'm talking with them on the phone. I try and keep in touch with, kids that we're really recruiting. I'll probably call like every other week. And so you start to build this relationship. You get a feel for things. You get them on a visit, and I'm asking these kind of questions, and I'll explain to them, this is our culture. How do you think you fit in with that? I really want guys with strong leadership. Do you think you have it? And give me an example to show me that that's accurate. So through all, and you're spending time and all those kind of things. And throughout all of that, you're getting an impression of them as a player. So I think that's a huge thing for prospective kids, that want to get looked at, and, that they're professional, that they're realizing their footprint. I'm looking at their social media. I'm looking at these things. I've rejected really good players because I saw some on social media that I was like, he seems really nice when I talk to him, but then he's saying garbage on social media, and that's not what we're looking for. Or I'll give you a really good example from this week. Okay. So I have a kid. I've known him for a couple years. He was getting some pretty good D1 interest from Stetson and a couple other, maybe like Central Florida and some stuff down there. He's from the Florida area. And I came to Case and I said, okay, do you have any interest in Case? I've switched over here now. I would still be very, very interested in you. Kind of responded, you could tell he was kind of really want to do the D1 thing, which is okay. Well, some of that just recently because of COVID, players that were going to graduate aren't. And so he kind of lost a spot. And so all of a sudden he's interested in Case. So I organized a virtual visit with this kid. This was a couple days ago. And we go on this virtual visit, and literally we're sitting like this, and I'm taking him on a virtual tour. I'm talking about the program. I say, these are the things that are important to us. This is what we're about. You have to be very serious about this. You're going to play here. This is, my expectations and so on. And he's going, phone. Yeah. Couldn't stop touching his phone for more than 30 seconds at a time, the entire time. And I almost just stopped the visit right there and just, I was like, whatever. So I get through it, and just as soon as we're done, I delete his name from our recruiting database. No, he's not there. He doesn't have the mentality. He doesn't have the maturity. He doesn't have the character. It's not important to him. The next day he texts me, said, "Hey coach, love the visit. What's going on?" And I texted him back and I said, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not interested at all anymore. And the whole time we were on the visit, you couldn't put your phone down for 30 seconds. I'm looking for kids that are high character, that are motivated, that are determined, that things like character and work ethic and attitude and respect are important to them. And I just don't get the impression that that's you. And that's just not where your focus is. So I wish you the best of luck, but that's my thoughts, and that's it. And so that, for us, that's a potential Division I player that could maybe, come in and maybe he could start right away. I don't know. But to me, none of that kind of stuff is important as the character, as the mentality. And so I think that's probably a good lesson for kids that are looking, how they present themselves, especially if they're, looking for that kind of environment. So.
Wow, that should definitely be a cautionary tale for a lot of players. And you hear stories like that. The more you're in, you had an opportunity, but maybe you weren't professional, or you had an opportunity, but you could tell it's like a form letter, right? Like they send it out to about, 100 different schools.
Yeah.
And so like showing genuine interest, showing that, okay, this is a school that I've put some forethought into it. This is something that I could see myself at. And I think that there's so many players who just want to they want to get recruited or they want to have that experience, but they really don't see themselves succeeding at the school. And then even on top of that, it's like, do you see yourself outside of the program? So if something happens and you get injured or you decide that, this isn't really for me anymore, are you going to be wanting to be at that school? Is this going to still be a school that you see yourself being part of the community? So
yeah, all things that are important. Yeah, you got to like the school for the school. I think there's a lot of kids that get caught up. I mean, I was probably one of them in my college search where I was just so concerned about just one couple of things that, not really doing your homework. You've got to know that you want to be there, whether or not you're playing soccer. You've got to do your homework. You got to talk to the coaches, and not just talk to coaches, talk to players. And that's something I recommend to kids all the time, because every single coach you talk to, they play a very attractive style of soccer like Barcelona or something, and the program's amazing and blah, blah, blah. And then you go, and that's why I say, ask the players what they think of training. Ask the players, I'm talking about this character stuff. So if you come on a visit and all the guys are drinking and all the guys are like, you bring that, oh, hey, I heard this character stuff's important. You're like, that's a problem. You shouldn't go there. Or if they have negative things, ask them about me, ask them about the staff, ask them about, I think all that's really important, because I think there's a lot of kids, and I hope somebody listens to this, but there's a lot of kids. My wife and I were just talking about this morning, that end up in school and haven't really done their homework, or they're just so concerned about the prestige of, I don't know, whether it's being at this place or whatever it is. And they go there and it's not what they thought. And they're there for a year or two. And then they're like getting into their upperclassmen years of college where they should be thriving, having a great experience. And they're so jaded and they don't really care about playing anymore. And they're just trying to get through it and graduate. And that's such a shame. And so I think all the things you're speaking with are really important, doing your homework and looking into it. And do I want to be here even if soccer goes south, and, just looking at all the aspects, and is it a fit? Do they have my major, all that stuff. So.
Yeah, that's so key. And I think you obviously are at a program or a university where it's pretty prestigious and there is some expectations. But it's kind of like, okay, take that away. Where do you want to be? And that's why I feel like the goal setting, that's why I feel like being intentional in what you do, it is so important throughout the college process, but really just in life in general. Like, what is it that you're trying to get out of it? So that's super cool. I think what I wanted to go into, because I think you talked about this before, was okay, well, before we get to that, I want to talk about what is it that you're looking for necessarily on the technical side. So you obviously said, you talked about, the character stuff. What does it look? What are you doing? How do you treat people in authority? How do you treat your teammates? But what is it that you're looking for on the technical side or the playing side? What is it that when you're seeing like, oh, that's a player that's going to stand out to me?
Yeah. Well, in that question, I think kids need to understand that it can depend. Every coach has got different opinions, and I'm sure you can attest in your career. There's coaches that thought you're good and really rated things that you could do, and there's other coaches that do just like other things. So different people have different things. But I think for me, the two main things that I look at when I'm evaluating a player are technique and intelligence. So I want to know that you are comfortable on the ball. I want to know that you want the ball. I want to see how you make contact with the ball, how your touch is. Can you handle being under pressure? Can you think your way out of situations? Do you make good decisions? Do you make the right decision because you knew it was the right decision? And those are the things that I'm really looking at. And I would say a big thing with technique is dribbling. And there's like a Pep Guardiola quote where he says something similar, where he's like, you can take a lot of people or anybody and help them to trap the ball and pass the ball to somebody else. But to be able to handle yourself on the ball and manipulate the ball under pressure, and I'm here and a guy's on my shoulder, I can pull it back and go the other way and be composed. Those I think are the big things for me that I'm really looking at, because I feel like whether or not the kid is really huge or really fast, if he's technical and smart, he can find ways around that. And so I for how I like to play, and those are what I'm really thinking about. If they can do those things, then, I can teach them other facets of the game, but it's really helpful to have that technical base. And I would say there's probably a lot of coaches that, whether they end up playing more direct or whatever, there's a lot of, I think most people are very attracted to that side, the technical side. And, so I think by the time you get to our level, your technical ceiling and some of that stuff, like your dribbling and some of that ability there's not as much elasticity, and like you can't all of a sudden get to 18, 19 and then from there turn into Messi. Like that happens when you're younger, with guys like you doing some of this training. And so that's where that, being on the ball, because if somebody gets to me and they're 19 and they can't do some of those things, it's very difficult.
Absolutely. And so how do you said the other part of that is the intelligence. So how do you, just seeing how they move in space, or seeing how they're solving problems, what is it that you kind of stands out? Like, obviously you see the technique, but what is it that the intelligence that you're saying, okay, I can work with that. I can work with a player who has this sort of game IQ?
Yeah, it could be a lot of things. It can be, it can be their positioning and understanding like reference points. So we talk with our guys about reference points. Okay, where I'm standing on the field is dictated by, okay, where is the ball? Where are my teammates? Where is the opponent? And where are we on the field? And so I'm thinking about, okay, do they make good decisions often based on those reference points, or do they make decisions where it's like they're really not taking into consideration that, okay, the ball's with our right back in our defensive third, and I'm the left back and I'm really high on the left side. The likelihood of the ball getting to you in that space is not great. You know what I mean? So at that point in time, based on that and, different things, I should probably be in a deeper, more inside position or whatever. So looking at that, looking at habits, what is the body shape like? Are they constantly scanning and checking their shoulder? I sent a video clip to our guys recently. It's like 15, it's maybe 15 or 12 seconds. It's Frank Lampard when he played, which, tough time for Frank Lampard right now. But basically it's a clip from him in a Premier League game, and he checked his shoulder like it's something like, in the teens within like 10 seconds. And he's just jogging around going, looking for space. So I look at those things. I look at, can they be a step ahead? So for me, if, someone might watch a player and he gets the ball and his head's down and a bunch of players come, and then he's trying to find a way out, and maybe he can kind of squeak out of it. But to me, the player where he was already looking, ball came in, two defenders came, and he dinked it around him for a combination and got out of it, he's a better player than the first player because he's smarter and he can think quicker. So those are all things I'm thinking about: technique, the speed at which you're thinking, and your positioning, and can you read some of those things, and when, where and when to be on the field. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's a lot that goes into, I'm just thinking about the holistic approach, right, that you're taking. Like, you have to have the character stuff, you have to have the technical stuff, you have to have the intelligence, and then on top of that, you're going to a school that is academically demanding. So it's, I guess, how important is it to players who are reaching out, or even parents who are listening to this and saying, okay, what is it that they're looking for? How important is it for them to understand that it's it's very, very, you're looking for a very particular type of player, very particular, and to be having honest conversations with them, their coaches, with their parents about saying, okay, do I fit this criteria that, that you just said?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And I think that's where, I think that's where they need to do their homework and see what's good, because my opinions are different than other people's opinions. Some places are looking for really big people that can run really fast. And, so I think, doing their homework, whatever is said, if I kind of give this spiel about we're looking for the technical side, blah, blah, and you show up to a game and we're just like pumping along and all that stuff, I think that's good for you to know, because then you're like, okay, if that's how I am as a player, if I'm kind of a technical player, I'm probably not going to be really successful here, because they just don't do things that are fit what I'm good at. And I think that's a big piece in the college process. Okay, even though you might like this place, are you a fit there? And I can tell watching kids in recruiting, they might be this type of player, but then they commit to school X, which I know is probably the opposite of what is good for, and then doesn't work out. It's like, yeah, I can kind of see it coming. So I think fit is a really big thing. And you are doing yourself a big service or disservice by picking a school that just doesn't, that fits or doesn't fit you. Because if it's just not a fit, for, I'm speaking specifically soccer at the moment, but if it's not a fit for what you're good at, you're just not going to be successful, or you're going to really struggle. And again, when I went through my process, I picked a school because it was a good soccer conference, and I knew I was going to be playing for high profile players, and that's what I picked. And I didn't really think about, did it fit me? And I was very more so kind of finesse-ish, I guess, especially when I was going to high school. And all we did at the school was play 4-4-2 and smash the ball. And I played in Center Park, and my job was to go crush people and get the ball back, and then give it back to somebody who then just pumped it along again.
Yeah.
And that's all we did. And that was really hard for me, and I kind of adapted to survive kind of thing, but I did not enjoy my college soccer experience. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's about really understanding, okay, putting aside about, okay, prestige, putting aside the how this is going to make me look because I committed to this school. It's really about saying, okay, what is it going to make me happy as a player? What's going to make me happy as a student? Or even just as a person in the culture at large? Like, am I going to fit here? And I truly believe that there's a lot of players who just they put aside a couple of those things, and then they just focus on one thing. It's like, well, the prestige is here. Like, so-and-so is coming after me. Like, okay, then let me go that way. And I think what you're saying, the same, like, you need to take the time to understand what is it that you actually want to get out of this experience. Because it does have an effect on long-term development and long-term long-term happiness, really.
I think that's really important. I mean, because it starts to affect your well-being, and I think that was definitely the case with me in school, where, things aren't working out how you hope on the field, and now you're starting to be a little bit down on that, and it's bleeding into your academics and your personal, you know what I mean? It's just, you're not happy. I think that's a big point you touched on. And another thing you said as well, I think that's really important. You mentioned this in the initial question, just having conversations. So that's something I always recommend to players. Ask these things to a coach. Like, this is kind of what I'm looking for. This is kind of my strengths. Do you guys fit that? Or another big question that I always recommend, where do you see me in the plans? Like, what is your plan for me? And where do I fit? And if a coach doesn't have a great answer to that question, you're probably not in the plans, and I think that's important for kids to understand. If it's in it, again, it all depends on what you want to get out of your experience. But for me, okay, if my kid is going to school, I want to know that they're getting they're being taught really well on the field, but they're getting this character stuff. They're becoming better leaders, becoming better people. Okay. And this is all great talk, but again, same question. These are things that I would ask if I was a kid. Okay, you're talking about character. How are you going to make me a better character? And if it's just like, well, we talk about that, it's one of our core values, that's cool, but like, give me, you know what I mean? And I think just finding the fit, being willing to be honest with coach, like, hey, do you think is this a fit for me or not? Do you think, shoot me straight. Where do you see me? All those kind of things. And I think there's so much emphasis put on the pressures on the player to be assessed by the coach and fit in with what they're doing, and not enough accountability on the coach to be like, hey, this are all things I'm doing to make this a great experience for you so that you should choose me. And I think that's a big thing, because I think there is a lot of second-rate coaching and second-rate college athletic experiences. And I think you can see that when you're like, what's your plan for developing young leaders? What do you do to do that? And so on and so on. And if there's not good responses for that, it's like, this school is really cool and it's Ohio State, but maybe it's not really going to give me what I'm hoping to get, so.
There's so many players who come into it saying, well, I want to be recruited. I want them to offer me, but really reaching out and saying, okay, how are you going to develop? If I choose to go to the school, like if I'm going to invest, obviously money, our resources, my time as well, like what am I going to get out of it? And I think that's something that doesn't necessarily happen at the college level. And I don't think it necessarily happens even at the youth level, as when you're growing up. Like, I know you're not necessarily as plugged in as on club, but even sometimes when you get people who say like, oh, I'm thinking about switching clubs, or I'm thinking about going to a different club, my thing is, ask questions. You can't just take everything that they say at face value, and you got to look beyond necessarily the winning aspect. Like you said, you played for a club that had multiple U.S. internationals even now, but you felt like you didn't learn as much, you didn't develop or grow as much. And so I guess what I would want players to take from what you just said is just saying like, okay, what am I going to get out of it? Being intentional, understanding like, okay, how am I going to get the most out of my investment? College
Definitely.
is growth, how am I going to invest, and what am I going to get in return from investing in this, and then doing the research. But I think players get so caught up in other things, or parents get caught up in other things, and then they're just kind of like, they end up having an experience that they're not necessarily happy or excited about. And I know that was part of my struggle on going through college. Like, I had certain expectations. I didn't reach those expectations, and then I invested into another place, and I thought that was going to give me the result that I wanted, and I ended up having to leave after one semester. And so just taking the time, allowing yourself to kind of relax, because you do have a lot of stuff going on, but really to say like, okay, what if I'm going to invest myself into my college career, what am I going to get in return? And understanding this is like a two-way street.
Right, definitely. And I think it goes back to a lot of what you pointed out with the goal setting and just thinking about what's important, and especially if you kind of line up more where you're like, okay, I want to not just be developed as a player, but I want these things as a person. And just really doing your due diligence and thinking about what do I want, and then evaluating schools kind of through that grid, I think is big. And so, obviously certain kids, maybe the aspects of that are more important than others, but I think even kids that are just, they're really focused on playing, I think even that, trying to ask the coach, like, you like these technical players that can make good decisions. How are you going to help me be better at that? Like, what do you do in training? Like, you know, because I do think there's just, yeah, there's a lot out there where you assume because a club team is winning, or you assume because it's, I don't know, University of North Carolina or something, that the instruction is good. And that's not always the case. And so, yeah, I think exactly asking questions, figuring out, okay, what's important to me, and then making sure I get those things as I do my search. So
That's sweet. That's sweet. Well, I appreciate it. I'm kind of I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot about culture and environment, and hopefully the people who've listened to this are going to learn a lot, or watch this are going to learn a lot about culture and environment, and about what it is that you're looking for, but also hopefully what it is that this will inform them about what is it that they're looking for in their own development and how they're trying to grow. But hey, I really appreciate your time, Carter. I know it's valuable, and I appreciate you giving a chance to kind of get on the podcast and hopefully inform the parents, inform the players in our program to what it is that they wanted out of their college experience, and what is it that you're looking for, and hopefully get the ball rolling in the right direction. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been great. Love chatting about this stuff. And in all seriousness, I know it can be difficult. Parents, like, it's your first kid and they're trying to play out. You have no clue what you're doing or whatever. So in all honesty, if anybody is listening to this, have any questions or specific questions about process, or when should I contact schools, or what should I be doing or thinking about in the pandemic, anything at all like that, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is on the Case website, athletics.case.edu, or just ccp51@case.edu is my email. So, just say, hey, I was just listening to this random podcast or whatever it is, following Coach Taylor and I heard about you, whatever. I'm trying to figure out with my kid, this and that, please don't, I'm happy to help anybody. I think that's just something I enjoy, and part of it, giving back to other people information. So yeah, no, thank you. Awesome.
Appreciate it. All right. Sweet. Okay. Thanks again for Coach Poe for jumping on to our podcast and giving lots of good information. Again, if you want to reach out and contact him, his information is in the link below. Go ahead, check that out. If your player is somebody who is interested in playing in college, or even if you're a player and you're interested in reaching out. So go ahead, feel free to reach out and talk to him. And then we're going to be having more of these podcasts, these interviews with different coaches, different trainers, different people who are around the performance training world. Lots of good information coming up. So go ahead and check that out. I'm going to have more interviews that are going to be releasing out here soon. So make sure to follow us on different social media, or make sure to jump in and join our email newsletter so that you can be the first to get information on upcoming different interviews and different conversations I have with various people involved in improving players' performance. So super excited about that. Check it out. Until next time, please take care.